Guys, what's up? Darcy here at 6 Strings 9 Lives. Welcome to episode 26 of 6 with 6 Strings. If you're not familiar with these episodes that I do from time to time, it's just me grabbing 6 albums from my collection. Sometimes random, but mostly centered around some sort of theme. The theme of these 6 today, and the one thing I did not realize till about an hour ago, is all these albums are from the 90s. So, you know what? Looking back, I had a lot of shit going on in the 90s. Met my future wife, kids, no money, bought a house, still no money. So I wasn't really buying a whole lot of music, but I managed to buy at least 5 out of 6 of these, put it that way. The 6th one, I'm only kind of newer to for over the past 3 or 4 years. But my theme here is albums that initially I wasn't impressed with. I don't know if I thought they were total crap, but they weren't kind of where I wanted them to be, put it that way. And in some of these cases, or some of these albums cases, it took years for me to grow on, for the album to grow on me, where I even went back, and through watching people's videos, they say, okay, they hold up this album and say, you really should try this album again, or maybe they rank it really high in a ranking, and I'm like, well, I did not like that album when it came out. So, and the one thing is, I've said it before, but timing is huge in the music that we listen to. Any type of music that could apply to anything. So timing. But some of these albums I've now went back to and thought, you know what, I've really underestimated these. I wouldn't say I put them all in the I love them category, but they're way out of the shit house now, and they're on their way up. I would even go as far as to say that if I was to re-rank some of these catalogs, there would be some movement near the bottom, put it that way. But so I just grabbed 6, and please feel free to jump in the comments. I'm sure everybody's experienced this, where an album initially, didn't hit that sweet spot for you. And then later on, click, there we go, love it. So I'm going to start off with, we'll go to the oldest one to the newest one. And like I said, they're all from the 90s. The first band, I proudly say this is a band that I have never missed a release. I bought their debut in and around when it came out. They had 3 absolute thrasher pieces in a row, and then they came out with this one that I was actually a little bit underwhelmed, but have learned to, this one I'm almost loving this album again. Production's still a little bit weak, but the band I'm talking about is Testament, and that's Souls of Black. Now, if you're familiar with The Legacy, The New Order, and Practice What You Preach, those are probably three of my all-time favorite thrash albums, period. And definitely one of my favorite thrash bands of all time. But when this first came out, and they use a different producer too on this one, Michael Rosen. Very thin on the production, I felt. People always talk about, yes, this was rushed and they had to get out on tour, things like that. That's all true, but I just thought overall it was just okay compared to the 3 albums that came before that. And years pass by and you grab it again, you kind of feel the same, but then one day you grab it again and say, you know what, I was wrong. This thing, it's awesome. And I've always loved the cover artwork. And this little ticket stub I've pulled out in several videos over the years, but I always kind of chuckle at the price I paid for the admission. So I got to see them on this tour. Open for Megadeth, Testament opened for Megadeth October 27th, 1990. $20 to go see these 2 bands, almost in their prime, whatever. Very cool. So yeah, so initially, you know what? I didn't love this album, but over the years, it's gone, it's climbing the ladder, put it that way. But Definitely looking forward to a New Testament album. I'm still thinking 2024. They're kind of on a, the every 4-year cycle. Whereas, back then you got Legacy 87, New Order 88, Practice 89, 1990, bang, 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 all these albums coming out only 1 year apart. Very cool. Let's grab, okay, here's another one that I really, to be honest with you, I've learned to appreciate it more. And there is factors that are involved when you don't like something. And one of them was, well, their vocalist left. And I don't know if I just shut the door knowing that, but that is Iron Maiden, the X Factor. But I'm going to show you something. When I walked into the record shop in 1995, I think I've told this story before too. This album was sealed on the shelf like this. Probably because of the at the time, 1995, this was just too graphic to show. So that's how I bought it. And then I found out this was the actual cover, flipped it around. But so getting back to this album, over the past, I would say 2 years, and I do have this ranked fairly low. It's definitely time for a new Iron Maiden ranking. I need to get Senjutsu in there. And I believe, I know that the X Factor would move up the ladder. Initial reaction, back in the day, because I bought this pretty much the week it was released. Did not really take to Blaze Bayley's voice. This was a much darker album. A running time of hour and 10 minutes. But man, there is some great tracks on here. And there's still some that they do to this day. I mean, Bruce does them and he does a good job, which I always commend Iron Maiden for honoring that. So, songs like Sign of the Cross, Lord of the Flies. What else have they done? They've done Man on the Edge. I think that's the only 3 they've ever done live with Bruce singing, which I would love to see or hear some Blaze Bayley, live era, official stuff. But I guess you could settle for a bootleg or whatever. But you know what? I can honestly say I underestimated this album for quite a few years, or just underappreciated it. But hey, it's back, and I actually really love listening to this album now. But initially, 1995, I was not so keen on it. Another one, and we'll go right into another one that, kind of the same thing happened. Painkiller comes out in 1990. Rob Halford, which Priest, Halford is one of my all-time favorite metal idols, right up there with Ronnie James Dio and, cool guys like Kai Hansen and, stuff like that. Anyways, so then Rob leaves the band. We get, we don't know what's going on, because actually 7 years go by before Jugulator comes out. We get a couple albums from Rob's new band, Fight, which I actually don't even own them. I have owned them in the past, but I don't like them. They're just not my thing. I almost tried to force myself to like them because it had Rob Halford in it, but I'm like, no, this is not that great. But then I waited, and this came out. Initially, did not like this. I do now. That's why it's appearing in this episode. But just a different Priest, probably, with Painkiller. This is one of their heaviest albums. I think, even the cover and everything, they're just trying to say, you know what, we can be heavier than Painkiller. They even down-tuned on here, which is very, unlike Priest. They kind of lost some of that just traditional metal sound to a more almost thrashy style in places. It's not thrash metal, not saying that, but just with the down-tuned, it was almost, definitely a little thrashy in places. But first one to feature Ripper Owens, which I do like Ripper Owens, and big shoes to fill for sure. But initially I thought, you know what, this is not that great. But over the years, definitely has grown on me. Favorite tracks on here for sure, Cathedral Spires, which I would love if Rob Halford would, or Judas Priest would recognize that and say, you know what, we need to do that live. We should pay some sort of tribute to the Ripper errors, which almost just gets dismissed. I don't agree with that. But anyways, another favorite of mine is Bullet Train. And I would say, where is it? Jugulator, the title track, not bad, but Burn in Hell. There is, like I said, the down-tuned, it just didn't totally suit Priest, but you know what? It's growing on me. Demolition, definitely not, we're not going to hold that one up because I'm not, quite, I do like some songs on it, but this one was, went from not liking it at all to, you know what, pretty damn good album. And if you've never heard this one, this is Priest, Judas Priest 98 Live Meltdown, which during this whole set, during this concert, they are down-tuned here too. So it pretty much, it gives a different spin on, your classics. Off of Jugulator, they only play 5 tracks on here, but other than that, it's all the, the Priest classics, which Ripper does a great job. So if you've never heard the Ripper years period, including this live stuff, check it out. All right, let's go to, here's one that I was actually looking back on my Slayer ranking, and I'm like, why the hell did I have that? I wouldn't say super low, but over the past 2 years, because of watching Friends and recommendations, this one has moved up the ladder to almost, I would put it as almost safely saying my 4th favorite Slayer album, behind some real obvious ones. But this is 1994's Divine Intervention. I actually bought this album fairly new, like in probably the same year of 1994, and then I just shelved it. Just felt like, it wasn't Rain and Blood, it wasn't South of Heaven, it wasn't Seasons in the Abyss. Something's missing. Yes, I know there's Paul Bostaff came in and started doing the drums, or started being Slayer's drummer, which he did a hell of a job on here, and I do really like Paul Bostaff's drumming, especially on one of my favorite Testament albums, Formation of Damnation. He crushed it on that one. But yeah, this, I don't know almost what I was thinking looking back, because there are some great tracks on here. A few favorites for sure would be Killing Fields. And there is no title, or there is no track listing on the back, is there? Anyways, we got it right here. Killing Fields, awesome song. Actually, the first 5 tracks, Sex, Murder, Art, Fictional Reality, Ditto Head. The title track, Divine Intervention, not bad. But yeah, just some great stuff. Serenity and Murder, 213, Mind Control ends this album with a bang. This is a real, has grown on me over the years quite a bit. So yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments, have you, is this something that happens to you too? I guess it could happen in reverse too. There's albums that you thought were, the cat's ass, that have dropped right off. So hey, might have to do a themed one on that one too. Here's another one. Love this band. I got to see Wasp in 1984 in their prime. Opened for Crocus, believe it or not, and I got to see them in 1987 on the Electric Circus tour. But they dropped off for me slightly with Still Not Black Enough, which is a good album. And then I kind of heard this album and I thought, what the hell are these guys doing? This is KFD, also known as Kill Fuck Die. Very dark album, kind of strong themes, but and the return of Chris Holmes probably after 6 years. But you know what? This is not as bad as it's made out to be sometimes. And I know it has its fans, so I'm not really, telling you that it's not as bad as it's made out to be, because you realize that it's pretty good. There is a bit of an industrial theme to it, not throughout. You have to really listen to every song. It starts off that way, where it's kind of some electronic type of drums to start that are mixed in with the real drums. Sted Howland is the drummer on this album. He is currently the drummer for Metal Church. Like I said, you got Chris Holmes returning, which his solos are great. Blackie's voice is really good. There is some screamy parts in here that I don't like that part of Blackie's voice, especially when they shit the bed after this album with Eldorado. That is one of the most screamy albums I've ever heard, but they redeemed themselves the year after, or not the year after, the album after with Unholy Terror. But anyways, back to this album. Man, it's got some great tracks. And if you kind of could block out that industrial vibe, or if this album was cleaned up a bit, you just say that's a Wasp album. I know some of the titles like Kill, Fuck, Die, but there's some great tracks on here, and I would say go check out one of my favorites is called Little Death. There's another good track called Kill Ahead. Wicked Love, great track too. And it finishes up with a song called The Horror. I think it's around 8 minutes long. But you know what? I really realized this when I was doing my Wasp album ranking, that, you know what? I really missed the boat. If I would have stuck to this album in 1997 when it first came out, I would say it might even rank higher on my Wasp list. So if you are a Wasp fan and you've totally said, you know what, I'm not listening to that part of Wasp's career, hey, I recommend you go back and at least check it out. But there's Wasp, KFD. Definitely a band that's due for a new album, I'd say. And finally today, an album that, actually a band that I was late to the party for, to. Recommendations through YouTube, spending a little over 5 years on here, has become one of my favorite thrash bands. But they had some bumps in the road too, 90s, and this album came out in 1999. And initially, people just said, you know what, just avoid Creator Endorama. Avoid it. It's shit. Don't like it. But this one, you know what, it's really growing on me. I'm not the hugest, I'll set this up a bit first. This has more of a bit of a goth vibe throughout. If you know bands like Paradise Lost, there's some of that kind of atmosphere in here. Millie's vocals are really good. I really enjoy the vocals. They're not overly, yelly, screamy as a couple of the other 90s albums. And you know what? You can't fault a band for trying something different. Obviously, it didn't work, and they kind of reset themselves in 2000, and they've been going strong for the past now 5 or 6 albums they put out that I just absolutely love. But just go back and really listen to this. I really, really enjoy this album, and this is definitely going to move up a couple of notches. And there's another ranking that I need to redo to include my second favorite album of last year, Hate Uber Alice. But go check out the tracks. Golden Age, the title track. Shadowlands is an awesome track. Passage to Babylon, Future King, great track. Everlasting Flame, that would be one that would be very similar to some of, I know Paradise Lost has, been all over the place, with their discography and, almost genres, but that one would be closest to, kind of some of that mid Paradise Lost. Everlasting Flame is what I'm saying. Great track. Soul Eraser. There's even a bonus track on this one called Children of a Lesser God. But yeah, I don't hate this album. Initially, I was kind of just convinced to hate it. And I bought it, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't very good. I almost can just believed that's the way it should be. And then I just kept listening to it and kept listening to it, which is what we did back in the day. So that's why I'm kind of thinking, the 90s, I didn't sink as much time into what I'm listening to as I did in the 80s. I mean, we drove around for hours. We wore out cassettes, we wore out CDs, well, not wore out CDs, but played them constantly. And now, I'm at the point in my life where I do have a little bit of extra time on my hands, and I do try to let, especially newer albums, sink in so I can, I've always said you can't replicate those times, especially in the 80s. I'm going to be 55 here in December, this December, but nowadays I'm trying to really invest in an album where I can, have that type of connection. But yeah, so there is my six with six strings. And let me know in the comments, do you have these albums that took, weeks, months, years to grow on? You've dismissed them and said, no, I am never going to listen to that. And lo and behold, you're pulling out that exact album. So let me know. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, stay heavy.